This is where we left yesterday. Today we're going to talk about a concept called JAD, or Joint Application Development. Understanding joint application development, what does this actually mean? So I would like you guys to make a note of this bullet point. So please make a note of this bullet point. I will also like you guys to make a note of the bullet point number 3. I will also like you guys to make a note of the last bullet point. So joint application development is an approach which allows to work several people together, collecting high-level requirements, developing project deliverables in a compressed time manner. So one of the important point to understand here is joint. So important point here is joint means working together, working jointly in the development process. In that, users, managers and analysts are working together for many days. So you have a business users, you have a technical people, you have a project managers, and all those people are working together for several days to jointly developing application. That is one of the primary concepts. Joint application development is fairly commonly used approach. It's very commonly used. Now, it's a very useful technique in which you can reduce scope and you can timeline by 50%. So one of the very effective method of development of software or implementing, even in SAP world, joint application development or JAD sessions can be used. One of the very important parameter here is, which I have mentioned in the last bullet point, which I ask you to make note, and that is facilitated workshop. Facilitated workshop. That term is important. So that term is important. Facilitated workshop. Facilitated workshop. So that is facilitated workshop. Workshop is one of the term which is very commonly used. Workshop is one term which is very commonly used in the real world. Workshops. For the business requirement gathering, we are doing a workshop. So this term workshop, you will find, is being used fairly commonly, very regularly in SAP world or in other software implementation development also. So that is an example of a facilitated workshop which use a facilitator to guide participants through a structured process. The process is designed to produce one or more project deliverables interactively with the workshop participants. Process is developed as a detailed agenda before workshop takes place. We do workshops. Workshops are used to work jointly. Workshops are used to work together and gather business requirement, do the discussions, do the validations, but workshop is nothing but a structured meeting. It is a structured meeting. Workshops are nothing but formal meetings in which you have a different set of people, large set of people, and working together on a specific development task, on a specific development area. When we talk about implementation of SAP and other complex software applications, joint application development is very commonly used, and workshop is nothing but a formal meeting. One of the thing here is facilitating. There is a facilitator or the person who is driving the meeting. Is a teamwork. You have different participants. Each participant has a specific role, and then is a facilitator who is the conductor of the whole workshop. Somebody asking questions, somebody answering, somebody making notes, somebody taking parking lot, somebody doing something else. So there is a structured approach. Goals of a JD. What does the JD do? So the first thing is it improves the communication. So it improves the communication, so because people are working together. So it speed up the process. People are working together. Helping together. Okay. And because we are working together in the same room, getting requirement, documenting, validating, designing, it make processes speed up. Okay. In its creativity, you can define and you can work better. So that's why joint application is help. In JAD sessions, you have a facilitator. Facilitator is the person who is basically facilitating the whole workshop. He's the conductor, he's the user. Scribe are the people who are taking notes. who are collecting information, documenting it. People and their documentation can be done on a Word document or making notes on a blackboard or whatever. But somebody making notes, a scribe. And another people is business users. So users basically means you have a core business people. People who are stating their requirement, people who are providing their business requirement. So we also have business users. And we also have managers. We also have managers. So we have all these different set of people working together. And these are some of the type of people who are engaged. Preparing for JAD sessions. Time commitment, half day to several weeks. So when you are going to JAD session, it's just not the walk into it. It requires many hours of preparation. It could be half a day, 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. But before you execute, before you conduct these workshops, there is always a planning session. There are certain documents which is being prepared upfront. Yesterday we were talking about questionnaires. We prepare them first. Process flow diagrams, we prepare them first. Collecting current state business documents, we collect them first. And then we take these documents and make them as a basis for preparing, getting ready, asking right question, preparing right set of questions. You cannot just walk into the workshop and you don't know what you're talking about. So people prepare. You see, the half day to several weeks preparation is required. So it is very well prepared, executed workshops. Then and only then they are being done. Otherwise not. There is no point doing this workshop if you are not prepared. Okay. We also do, if you look at here, the careful planning. Now in the planning, some part of that we discussed yesterday, which basically means if I'm doing this workshop, then who would participate? Who will come? Who should come? What and how many people we need? How many hours we need? Does this workshop need to be 2 hours? Does it workshop need to be for 5 hours? Does this workshop need to be for 10 hours? For how many hours workshop we want to do? And so on and so forth. All these things are prepared upfront. And that is part of planning. You cannot just go to workshop and you're just talking for 2 hours. I have done various workshops which go for 2 days. I did, like, we are doing workshop for complete 2 days, 8 hours, 16 hours. We did the business blueprinting in Bangladesh. I was talking to you yesterday. We did for almost 8 days, end to end. We are a group of 8-10 people working constantly for around 8 to 10 days. And we did that. And that is a very common occurrence for executing, conducting, performing these workshops. This is just a JAD session meeting room. You have all these things planned. You have a whiteboard, you have a screen, you have a projector, you have a PowerPoint presentation, all these different documents, and you also have a place, and there's a projector, there's a printer, a scribe, there's all these people, and then they're working together. So it's a very well orchestrated, planned meeting. Give me a second, guys. Hello. हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी. हम्म. मैं जल्दी तो आ जाता हूँ, बट मेरी ना वो वर्कशॉप वी कैन मेरा पहले क्लास रहता है ना, वो कहानी है. कोई बात नहीं, तो फिर मेरा जो क्लास है 2-2:30 बजे खत्म होता है, राइट? तो उसके बाद में बात कर सकते हैं, बाद में इज ओके विद मी, बिकॉज देन आई हैव अ गैप इन बिटवीन. तो आप मेरे को 1 घंटे बाद कॉल कर लेना, 1.5 घंटे बाद, देन आई कैन टॉक टू इन द फोन. देयर इज नो नीड फॉर यू फिजिकली टू बी देयर. यू कैन, आई प्रॉब्ली कैन हेल्प यू इन द फोन. हाँ, 2-2:30 बजे कॉल कर लेना मेरे को. अभी तो मैं क्लास. वेलकम. नो, वेरी वेल. बाय बाय. हेलो. EJD basically means doing these joint application development workshop electronically, which basically means like a conference call, like we are doing right now. That is also fairly commonly used. So a lot of people do a lot of these workshops. Everybody does not need to be there physically in the room. They could be there on phone. They could be there on electronically available to us. So there could be joint application workshop on the basis of that as well. This is just an example of and how this workshop can look like. A picture representing, depicting a typical workshop. So in that you have a flip chart, you have a screen board, you have a scanner, projector. This is facilitator. We have business users. Everybody normally have a nameplates too. So people know that who is there and all those different things. And then entire workshop is being executed. This picture which you look at, this flow diagram, which the picture which you see at your screen, will give you a bit of an image that how probably a workshop could look like in the real world. This is an example, a pictorial view of that possible workshop. Conducting JAD sessions. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the 4 points, make a note, please. Make a note, please. This is conducting JAD session. You have formal agenda, ground rules. Ground rule basically means you start on time, end on time. You have breaks. You have tea breaks, lunch break. Top-down structure, mostly successful, means workshop facilitated by the leader. Role of facilitator is very important because these workshops are actually conducted by the facilitator. Therefore, the role of the facilitator is very, very important. He keep the session on track. He take those sessions, make sure it is start on time, end on time, ground rules are being followed, agenda is being followed, topic being discussed in detail, people are playing their role, scribes are making notes, business users are participating, etc. Help technical terms and jargons. If somebody is not understanding some of the terms of the concepts, technical team help with them. Recording, making sure that we are neutral, stay focused, we resolve issues. And then we do the post-session follow-up. Post-session follow-up basically means if we did a session for 4 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours and we find out we still have some issues open. We find out that there are certain points which is not being resolved or there is any open item for that matter. In those cases, we can use post-session follow-up. We can use post-session follow-up. These are some of the common terms which we use in our day-to-day life. Project leader. Project leader is the person who is sponsoring the project. The role of the project leader is very important. He introduces. He is the one who set up the ground rule. He decides the documentation and guidance and what kind of documents we're going to use, what kind of method we're going to use. He defines the roles. He decides who is going to be facilitator. And there are many, many different roles of each of these people. Post JD follow-up. Now, even if you do best of the workshop, it does happen that not everything in the workshop was discussed. There are some open items. There are some parking lot items which remain, and for them we can do post joint workshop follow-up call also, joint workshop discussion also. In that case, you can create a agenda for that. Okay, these are the 5 items which was left and we could discuss. They were not resolved, and then for them we do a meeting, and that is being done afterwards. Normally the post JD follow-up are the smaller meetings. There were less number of people participating in it, unlike having a large group of people. So these are the small follow-up calls which we do. Questionnaire. We talked about this yesterday, and these questionnaires are very important. These questionnaires basically are critically important in most cases. These questionnaires in most cases are being used to basically drive the discussion, to collect business requirement. Many times you spend a lot of time in focusing, determining, understanding these set of questions, determining that what all questions we require. what kind of questions we require. So these are the questionnaires. Questions should be on the topic by topic. Questions should be clear. Questions should determine top to bottom requirements. Questions should be there to make sure that it covers the entire scope of area. One of the problem come in the questions is, though, which I've seen in my past experiences, that sometimes people who we are asking the questions, they do not understand the questions. They do not understand what does this question consist of. What is the meaning of it? That has become one of the important aspects to making sure that people are understanding these questions correctly. Good questionnaire design. So questionnaires, as we say, should be simple, self-explanatory, to the point, explicit, detailed. And that is an example of a good questionnaire design. Document analysis is study the existing material, describe the current state. So we talked about yesterday and also briefly today. One of the very important aspects for understanding the future requirement is to understand the current requirement. We put the forms, reports, policy procedures, organization charts and others. People create that. Understand the organization chart. How many people work in this company? Who is the head of sales? How many people? How many sales manager? How many? All these organized charts. Sometimes that is also important to understand the design the system, whether we are designing the system for 20 people or 200 people or 2000 people. There could be different design parameters. Look for various informal informations. So it is not always formal but also informal systems, some kind of site systems, manual system. You also look for the forms report. Now forms report basically means if you are designing this system, what kind of reports you will require. Okay, I want to create a sales order, but do I need a sales order analysis report? Do I need an open sales order report? That is also part of requirement to understand reporting. Forms, what kind of output? Do I need to send some kind of an output to the customer? That is output. That is example of an output. Okay. Observation. Another important part is observation. Watch the processes. So I will give an example. We were defining a system for a warehouse, and we actually visited warehouse. We took a tour of the warehouse. I was in Bangladesh. They were manufacturing. We took one-day tour of their manufacturing facility. We visually, from end to end, we went to all departments. How do you receive the goods? How do you store the goods? How is your warehouse? How many machines? How do you do machines? How they look like? We looked at the entire system. We looked at the entire processes, end to end. Watch, observation. That is example of a having process used informally. And users, managers don't often accurately recall everything they do. So make sure that we drill them, check the validity of information. That's another very important aspect. Check the validity. Beware of the behaviors. Right? Workflow analysis. Workflow. Workflow basically decide the flow of the entire process end to end. How many people are involved? Who signs it? Who is a signatory? Who is approval authority? Workflow. So you also do workflow authorization. If I have to issue the check to a customer or to a vendor or to an employee, who signs the check? Who is authorized for the check? Who is the approver of that check? Workflow. What are the bottlenecks of the process? So we need to look into the bottlenecks. So what are the bottlenecks of the process? What are the duplication part of the process? What are the job responsibilities? Management. Workflow. To overanalyze is paralyze. Make a note of that term. To overanalyze is to paralyze. I've been talking about the detailed business requirement. We have to gather business requirement. We have to be very explicit. We have to be very clear. We have to be very firm on the business requirements. But equally important is not to get into circles, is not to get in too much of a, you just keep going and going and going and going and going. We can also not do that, because that is also not going to help. So we need to use a common tangent to analyze properly, to analyze in detail, and also making sure that we are not over analyzing, and also making sure that we are not over analyzing. So we need to balance out both, under analysis and over analysis. Both are problem. Of course, under analysis is dangerous, and similarly over analysis is equally dangerous as well. We cannot do over analysis. Selecting the appropriate requirement technique. Now one thing is like what kind of requirement technique you're going to use, that you don't decide. Mostly the project managers, project directors, project controllers, senior managers, they will decide. But you select an appropriate requirement technique based upon what type of information you're gathering, what is the depth, what kind of solution, how complex this solution, how many users, you're talking the 5 users, you're talking the 500 users, timeline, cost, and so all these different parameters come into the picture, defining what kind of requirement, whether we're going to use interview process, we're going to use JAD session, we're going to do workshop, what method we will use, it is essentially depends upon various parameters. So we talked about interviews, we talk about job application development, we talk about questionnaire, document analysis, observation. Sometimes we combine them. They are not like if you do joint application development, you don't do observation, or you don't do document analysis, you don't do questionnaires, you don't do interviews. You can do all of them together as well. So for example, if you're doing SAP implementation, you do JD also, in that they use questions, they also do current state document analysis, they also do observation. Go and visit the factory, and visit factory physically, going there in the factory shop floor, taking a round, visiting every department, talking to some of the key people and asking them, how do you do this? You're going into the warehouse, seeing actual procurement being done, checking actual goods being received and removed. So they are not separate. They can be used together as well. And often they are used as together. Okay. Often they are used together. Fact-finding ethics. So in the fact-finding ethics, we have various parameters in that we have to be careful. We have to have a proper plan. We have to be sensitive information. We are not asking their salaries. We are not asking their medical history. We are not asking their personal information. We are not asking their credit card information. We are not asking their social security number. We have to be careful. These are some of the common ethics. You cannot ask somebody, what is, personal information. That's not good. We need to have ethical behavior, obviously, and make sure that we are building credibility, we are firm, we are honest, and we are asking right questions. Summary. The analysis process focus on capturing the business requirement of the system. Capturing business requirement for the system. We collect business requirement. That is the key. That is the core. That is the primary element. That is the primary element. We talk about the functional requirement. We talk about non-functional requirement. We talk about the business process automation. We talk about the business process improvement. We talk about the business process requirement. We discuss to identify business value. That is also very important. Asking what is this project going to cost? Asking what is the risk of this project? Summary. And then there are 5 different requirement techniques. You use interviews, we talked about. You use JDs, you use questionnaires, you use document analysis and observation. Normally, what I have seen in my personal experience, people combine few of these things together. They do JD. In the JD, they use questionnaires to ask questions. They also use current state document. They also do observation, means going and physically taking a walk onto their premises, into their factory, into their warehouse, into their various departments, and looking at the information, watching them, how they're doing, how, if you are in shipping the product to customer, how do you ship it, and all those different things. So this was the last slide of this presentation. I was planning to go to the next slide, but it is only 7 minutes. So I'm finishing the class here today, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care. Thanks. Bye.